finished color study number 6, and normally when I finish something I put it aside and give myself some space from it. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a painting or you just finish it, your mind is wrapped up in it and it thinks it's perfect, like yay, this is wonderful, but you don't realize there's a whole lot of things that could be improved upon until you give yourself some space and you look at it with fresh eyes. Sometimes you don't have that luxury, and so but you know, often you do, and in this case I do have the luxury, but before I let it fully dry, I want to just look at it with asking myself difficult questions about it, like, do I really like this or not? So I have a checklist in my studio that I got off of a website. I heard about this website from the Plein Air podcast with Eric Rhodes, and he had a guest on there who talked about her checklist that she has for is her painting finished or not. And I got it from her website, peggyimmel.com, and I wrote it down on this little piece of paper, little notebook paper, and I keep it on my website. No, not on my website. I keep it on my bulletin board in my studio, and just for this, so when I finish something, I want to ask myself, is it done? So some of the questions on here are, did I make my point? Did I establish the focal point? You only get one focal point, and did you do a good job of nailing that? Does the eye move through the canvas without exiting out the sides? Is there enough contrast? And by contrast, it could be value contrast, which is light and dark, which is what we typically think of contrast, but contrast could also be color, like is there enough contrast between this color and that color? Or edges, some soft edges, some hard edges. You want to vary it up in your painting, and you especially want the focal point to have the most contrast. Are the values correct? Which is the lightness and darkness of this piece. One way to check lightness and darkness is to take a photograph and then turn it black and white with your editing software. Or one way is to use this handy little tool. I just picked it up at Wet Paint, and I will show it to you right now. I'll put it over the lens. So that cuts off the color of the painting, and you can see it monotone. Yes, it's like red, but it shows you the lightness and darkness of your piece. So, and that's helpful. That is actually more powerful than color when seen from a distance. Your eyes will subconsciously notice the value. And if the values are off, your painting will be off and you're not going to know why. So check that always. You know, it's good to check that before you say, oh, I'm all done. Is there an unequal distribution of elements? So you don't want the same amount of sky as land, and you don't want the same amount of light as dark. You know, all those things. So value, temperature, shapes, horizon line, texture, unequal distribution of all that. What is the color scheme like? What is the saturation like? What is the edge work like? What is the drawing and perspective like? You want all these things to be thought about. Not that they have to follow some formula or be the same for every painting, but you want to have a plan and a think about it, and does this work for this piece? And another way to check it and trick your brain into seeing it with fresh perspective is to use a mirror. You can also, taking a picture helps too, and looking at it on my phone. Every time I take a picture of my painting to post on Instagram, I'm like, oh, that's ugly. And then I go back and fix it, because something about seeing it on a picture is different than when you see it in real life. So that is a helpful tool to look at it with fresh eyes. And another thing is to use a mirror. This is just a little hand mirror for putting on makeup or something like that. But if you look at it through you hold it up to your nose and you angle it so that you can see your painting like that, you will now get a flipped image in your brain. and your brain will register it as a whole new painting even though you've been working on it a while. And so you can have a fresh eye, but you're only going to look at it through this tiny little sliver. So, but it does help. So I've done this, I take photos, I go through the checklist, I try and do all those things before I put this painting away, because right now it's wet and I could change things really easily if I want. You can still change things after it's dry, but it's a little bit harder. So after going through this list and looking it over, there's a few things I want to change on this painting. I want to desaturate the sidewalk in the distance so that it looks further away. I want to clean up some of the edges here and here. And oh, I have to sign my name. But other than that, I might just let this dry as it is. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.